afternoon, everyone. The Ranter is back to go into his rambling diatribe of the news of the day. We have a few points to get into uh, between the Democratic debate that happened earlier to Super Duper Tuesday, which was not so super or duper, and of course the continuing spread of the coronavirus and the political side of that we see, and the street level that we see concerning with school closings and people's behavior in grocery stores and what they're buying, what they're not buying, what they're not even finding. So, where to begin with this? We had a debate on Sunday with Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. It was actually interesting because the way things are going on concerning the coronavirus, it was clearly without an audience. So I was going into that thinking that because there isn't going to be an audience for them to have taglines in order to get those cues for audience approvals, we might hit some substantive stuff, and we kind of did. They both go into a number of items, some of which is just we're going to do things better than Trump. Well, that's a given. Not that a given that they're going to do something better than Trump, but it's a given that they're going to say that, because if they weren't going to do something better than Trump, why are they running for president? But we have a few things that went back and forth on that, and the things that I kind of did a takeaway from the debate. One being that despite the fact that it was Joe Biden's strongest performance at a debate, which I guess that you can chalk that up to because it was just him and Bernie, the concentration level can be maintained. That there was a little less chance of him wandering off, sort of, given that he does have issues with decline, which I've mentioned over and over again. However, he did skip a few times. Noticed. I think it's when he gets really challenged and challenged quickly that he does tend to stumble from that. I think that is something that if he gets into debates with Trump will try to do. So he better be prepared for it. The thing is, though, is that his decline is not like a consistent thing where you just know he's going to, because he can be sharp. He can still maintain his role, so to speak. But however, the problem that also comes about is that when he does get flustered and he tends to blurt out things that is in error, that could be downright lies. And the thing is that at this point we do not know if that is, lie of intent or lie because he just wanted to say something out. One thing that is a problem in politics, especially when you get into elections, where when you're in the spotlight, then the magnifying glass comes on, is that anything you say can be verified as to being either true or false. So, at one point, Bernie really was going after Joe Biden because Joe Biden just said the wrong thing, and that triggered Bernie. And so Bernie was like, when they accused him of getting like big dollar donors, Bernie says, "Okay, name them," which was a cool moment. And he did go after Biden because he pretty much got him to falsely say that he didn't say anything about Social Security in the past, which that's not true, because again, anything you say in politics that is verifiable can be found. And so we found clips from 1995 of Biden talking about cutting a bit of the Social Security. Different time, different place. Yeah, it's 95, it's a while ago. But again, We're in the age of the internet. We're in the age of television. We're in the age of, going back to news clippings. We can go back and see him compromising with segregationists and using rhetoric when talking about being anti-busing that, for maybe in the 1970s, that somehow is tolerable terminology. But when you're in 2020, you bring that up and he says, holy shit, what the fuck's wrong with Uncle Joe? That's the kind of thing, is that people can't, people who run for president seem to think that they can't cover their bases, or don't feel like they need to cover their bases. Because people will go back in time and find what phrase that you used in dealing with a policy, or what policy that you voted for, which contradicts what you are saying now. Now, here's the thing. Yeah, a lot of questionable things can come up. Someone can side with certain people and vote on certain things which are like unfavorable now. If you acknowledge that that was a mistake, and you come out and say it's a mistake, that is one thing. If you don't have an answer to why were you against anti-busing, or you contradict your own record, it says, no, I wasn't against it, that's a problem. And I don't know if it's a memory thing, or it was they weren't expecting this level of hostility. But nonetheless, Joe is going to have a problem with this. And what the concern is in terms of him becoming the nominee and being against Donald Trump has no shame. Donald Trump does shit wrong, doesn't apologize for it, doesn't even think about it as being wrong. He just keeps on chugging away because he's greed on wheels. He's not going to worry and stumble over the morass of morality when something that he did that is considered ethically or morally wrong. He doesn't care. So he'll gut Joe Biden, and he will try to go after him like something bleeding in the water, like a shark in a frenzy. Now, that's the worry that a lot of us have on this. Whether Joe can be prepared for it and counter it, we'll see. There is still one thing, and I kind of said this in the last video, is that the one thing that Joe Biden kind of has a favor in is, for some of us who do these deep dives into politics, and we see like the records and so forth, because none of this stuff is secret, okay? A lot of the stuff that Joe Biden has done, from the crime bill, from the busing, from the things he has said on policy, because it's not just a matter of him voting for some things, him stepping up and explaining it in a not so not the word appropriate, but in a way that doesn't age well, let's say, for what he would say about busing in an article in the 1970s, he probably would not say now in 2020. Or what he would say in supporting of his crime bill in the mid-90s, he probably wouldn't say in 2020. We who do these deep dives, we who are these political wonks, we see this stuff and we say, holy shit, this is terrible. Casual people, they like Joe. They love Joe. On Tuesday, they came out in droves in 3 states to vote for Joe Biden. A good number of people came out and voted for Bernie too. But they came out in the midst of weather, in the midst of what was going on in their jobs. They came out in the midst of a coronavirus to vote. Now, whether or not they needed to be encouraged by Joe Biden to come out, because his tweet, that can be a matter of debate. If you want to use that against him, how dare he tells people to go out and vote if they were going to go out and vote anyway. If you want to use that, all right, then cynically, just wait. Just wait 5 to 7 days where this could be incubating into people's systems, where they show no symptoms. Give it a week, 2 weeks. Start combing through articles, looking for evidence of people who were at these voting places, and getting sick afterwards. Then you can have a correlation of mass of people showing up in a given spot or given spots and infecting each other with the virus. We have seen articles concerning people going out in mass locations, and I posted something upon in Florida. A whole bunch of people showed up on the beach and just did their beach thing. Go out into the water, lay out in the sun, socializing, all that stuff, in defiance of the fear of the coronavirus. Now, when presented with this, people do go, well, they still could be doing social distancing. They give themselves enough space. They can do whatever they want. It's fresh air. It's the sun. It's the ocean. It could be that there isn't any more risk there than any other time, because even though you have a large number of people there. So maybe we'll just have to see, in terms of this past Tuesday's voting, whether or not it's detrimental for everyone who had come out, because in these 3 states, over 1 million people came out. Obviously, they didn't come out at the same time and in the same location, but it still could be a relatively large amount of people in a given voting place waiting in line. So, before we're coining the phrase typhoid Biden, as I coined the phrase typhoid Trump, let's see what happens a couple weeks. And then rightfully, you can go after Biden over that. For him and the surrogate to suggest still going out to voting even if you feel healthy. Because, as you correctly pointed out, people like my friend Vin from Vin and Story, check them out, YouTube, blog. Because of coronavirus is that you could be infected with it, not have any symptoms, and yet infect other people with the shedding of it off of your skin, off of your moisture from your eyes or mouth, whatever, contact. So yeah, you can go in there not feeling a thing, feeling fine, and yet you could be infecting everyone around you if you come into contact with them. So yeah, we'll have to see. But in the matter of that, we'll segue into that for a moment, then we're going to go back to the debate, because I have more things to say about it, because I'm ranting and don't have a coherent chronological thing I'm doing about this. In terms of that, the super duper, not so super duper Tuesday did see Joe Biden clean sweep 3 states. Ohio obviously not being one of them, since they decided not to vote. But Florida was a big win for Biden. I think he cleaned Bernie out 2 times over in the amount of voting. He had over 1 million plus to Biden's 300,000 and change or so. our friend in the Middle America community, Isabel, who is a staunch Bernie Sanders supporter, and actually goes out and does the legwork because some of us can talk about our support of our certain candidates. She actually does it. So, props for her to being that active. So some of us is, I like that. Hey, hey, are you gonna go out? No, no, I'm tired. No, no, she's a. God bless her. She's awesome. Anyway, she pointed out today that Bernie Sanders got an interesting amount of support in Florida from the Cuban community, which is kind of interesting given that Bernie Sanders, when Bernie Sanders was ahead in the delegate count, when he was the front runner, that's when you started hearing stories upon, his past statements and his stances on being a democratic socialist because socialism is scary. We'll get into that in a moment concerning coronavirus. But for now, we'll just we'll just continue on this track of how scary this is, okay? So one of the things that they brought up in the media during time when Chris Matthews was starting his anti-socialism campaign on his show and all the other shows that he was a guest on, which incidentally led to his ousting after he compared Bernie Sanders' win to the Nazis taking over France. But one of the things that Bernie had said was that Fidel Castro had improved the healthcare and the education of Cuba when he took over. Now, people were wringing their hands over this. How dare he say that? Castro was a thug. He is a communist monster. He terrorizes his people. He terrorized us during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Our ill-fated coup attempt at the Bay of Pigs. We don't we're not accustomed to any American having anything nice to say about Fidel Castro. Now, Barack Obama also said the same thing about Castro. The thing is, how Obama kind of got a pass on that was because Obama couched what he said about the education and the healthcare with the fact that these, whatever good qualities he were, also came from a bad guy. That doesn't assuage away like the brutality and the iron boot on people's necks that it was the Castro regime. And given the fact that this good healthcare and this good education was necessary components for the indoctrination in order to get people to believe in their dear leader, which has been brought up a number of times. So you would think that anyone who is a refugee of Cuba, going from the Cold War on up, or at least from the 1950s, 60s on up, who are still alive, or the descendants of these refugees who are now amongst us in the communities in Florida and so forth, they would not take kindly to Bernie Sanders' words. As innocent as they are, as just anecdotal facts as they could be, even though it's left out of the whole indoctrination part, you would find that majority of people would not take kindly to that, especially given that socialism was being used as the scare that if Bernie Sanders became president, the DC Mall would become Red Square 2.0. It wouldn't. If he became president of the United States, he's just one guy. One guy, even a president, cannot turn a country socialist. Oh my God, people. Grow up. But, be that as it may. So it is interesting that he did garner support from that. It's a nice little footnote, it's a nice little anecdote. Joe Biden still won 2 times over in Florida. But going back to the debate, there was one point that I kind of made. I was watching the live stream of the debate with Vin and Sori and the other people at Middle America. They were watching, and we were interacting back and forth. At one point, they talked about immigration and they talked about the border crisis and what they would do, what they wouldn't do, how they're going to contrast with Trump. And they were saying stuff, both of them, was saying stuff that was pretty much vague. They didn't want to do what Trump was doing. They didn't. So if you bring up, if you have a migrant or someone who jumps the border, do you take them to the authorities? They're very hesitant to say yes or no on that, but they were leaning towards no. That is not the correct answer. I mean, that can be the pandering answer, sure, but that's not the correct answer. Because that is stuff where, yeah, you want people to agree with that and go, yeah, sure, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do what Trump is doing. Yeah, we're not going to do that. But that's not realistic of an answer. That's not a definite answer. You know what is a definite answer? Something that you can absolutely contrast against Donald Trump? And I'm talking, for those, I mean, I know I get about a dozen or so people watching this, but be that as it may. The definite thing that you could say to contrast Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden with Donald Trump is that, unlike Donald Trump, I will hire more immigration lawyers. I will hire more immigration judges. I will make sure that these cases that have been backlogged for years gets expedited, that gets seen. And why is this a contrast? Because when we were really knee deep in the Trump administration's gung-ho approach of building a fucking wall, one of the things he said flat out that he did not want to do is that he did not want to hire immigration lawyers. He did not want to hire immigration judges. He does not want these cases expedited. He does not want it to be easier. He does not want the backlogs to go down. He doesn't want people in here. And in the sick politics of this, when you eliminate options, when you close loopholes, when you close opportunities even to migrants, even to asylum seekers, then you make people desperate. And when people get desperate and they start doing things that they shouldn't be doing, instead of coming to the door, which they do, they come to our door. And you tell them no and you force them back. And they're so desperate with the situations that are going on in their lives that they have to try to go around it. And then when they try to go around it, you catch them and you go, hey, see? And then you can do the inhumanities because you push them to the point of being desperate. And then the bag of horrors happen at the border. Then you get these people detained. Then you get these people separated from child to parent. And then you end up deporting the parents. And then you end up having the children adopted. So they would never see their parents again. And while you're holding them, even though people get sick and they die, let's not give them flu shots. It was the proactive part of this administration to make it so god-awful and horrific that no one should come to the border. And for some of you that would want to talk about Barack Obama being the deporter-in-chief, and that he did his term of detaining people when they were coming to the border, I can probably guarantee you that he did not have the malice of forethought to make the situation that is already untenable and already harsh far worse on purpose. I'm sure that Barack Obama would not deny flu shots, that would not deny doctors to see them. You want to compare and contrast, but you seem to overlook and brush off and gloss the context. So yeah, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders missed an opportunity to give a logical, adult, realistic answer. That what I would do in contrast to what Trump is doing, not even going into all the horrible shit that I just mentioned right now, say I would hire more immigration lawyers, I would hire more immigration judges, and I would expedite these court cases. Because ultimately what that would do is that all those cases would go down. It would make it easier for people to come in legally. They don't have to go back to the place where they were going, where they're coming from, and having to wait in line. We'll make the line move. That isn't in the best part of that. That isn't amnesty. That isn't just letting people in. That is making the job that you got, you know, we'll say numerically, vaguely, like 5 or 10 people are doing cases of hundreds of thousands. Make it, instead of 5 to 10 people, make it 100 to 500 people, or whatever, however the amount is appropriate to expedite these cases. Now, that was my thing on that. That was my sticking point on the debate, and it's amazing how you get into these situations where you bring something up like this, and our psyche is too hell bent on the actual fight and the actual drama, and the argument of what do you do at the border? Here's this and this. Well, and then you don't think about this thing where when you finally think about it, when you think about it, yeah, immigration lawyers, immigration judges, that is actually a no-brainer. That is not dramatic as tear down this wall. That is not as dramatic of stop separating these children from parents. All that can be said, fine, sure. But immigration judges, immigration lawyers, instead of it being rhetoric, solves the problem. Gradually? Sure. Slowly? Sure. But inevitably, it solves the problem. And they didn't say it. Neither one of them. They were too busy trying to, get those people who are hardcore to who weren't even in the room. All right, that aside. What else? What else is in the news? Oh, I don't know. The plague of the 2020 that I said in the last video that didn't have to be a plague. The appeal of calm is obviously not working. Now, when I'm not ranting, and I'm not sitting in my various locations of me ranting, I work. I work in retail. I work at a grocery store. I close my grocery store pretty much every night. So when I get out, that's why I don't do these things in normally daytime, which is rarity that I'm doing right now. When we're calling for calm, get your stuff and, but be kind of humane about it and get what you need to hold up if you need to hold up. People do that, but people also clean us out in manners that is unnecessary, especially when it comes to our humanity. So the last few days at my work, we've had our stock being kind of threadbare. Because me closing my store, I tend to come in relatively later than most people that come in. I'm the last person to arrive at my store. We'll have deliveries show up. We'll have delivery trucks show up in the middle of the night, early morning, And despite them showing up, still takes hours to get things off the trucks onto pallets, pallets to the floor, and those things worked onto the shelves. So there is a time discrepancy in this. Okay, my store opens at 5 a.m. What I understand, people were showing up at 5 a.m. and whatever was delivered, by the time I arrived at my work, it was gone. This is not towards people that need this, but this is towards people who feel the need that when they're stockpiling, they want to make sure that they and they alone have the necessities because they're entitled. And people's behavior towards us who are working is less than favorable. I told a story yesterday about a guy and a girl was going through. They had a big order, and the bagger that was working with them wasn't paying attention very well. She wasn't as careful as she should have been. Normally she is, and I actually did not see how hard or how fast she was holding their stuff. But the guy was starting to yell at her and started to curse at her, and she's special needs, and that was pissing me off. And so I decided to do it. And I explained the difference between accident and intentional. So when I did it, and I did it carefully, except for the one item that I demonstrated that difference with, he was still giving her shit, and I told him to fucking stop. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Because he was bringing his bad day into the store, and he was taking it out on an innocent person. And, do that towards me? Yeah, I'll take that. I'll give you my serial kill stare, but I'll take that. Do that to somebody who is doing something in accident that is not intentionally trying to ruin your fucking day, then I have a problem with that. But not everyone is like that. And when we go into these stories of how the shelves are clear, there's no toilet paper, and there's this and there's that, and you think people are hoarding, some people could be, some people could not be. The 2 days before that, a lady came in and she spent about 2 hours shopping, hardcore shopping. She did about 2 transactions, basically on the virtue that she wasn't done yet, but she wanted to at least get some of the stuff to her house immediately. So all told, she did 5 carts of food and so forth, and between the 2 orders, it came out to over $1,000. Okay. Now, the thing about it though is that she was not hoarding. She's the primary caregiver to her father. Her father is elderly and is most susceptible for the coronavirus as his immune system is compromised. So she is going to isolate herself, as is her husband and as is their 4 children, for a month. So hopefully all this blows over. Now when she came up to me with this, she was kind of jittery and nervous. She was probably also kind of embarrassed of what she had to do and how this looks or with people around her and so forth. And so I saw this and I wanted to alleviate that. I wanted to make her laugh, and I did. I wanted her to think positively. I wanted her to take her mind off of the worst case scenario and just look at this from look at it from the sign of the absurd. This is absurd. The greatest country on earth having to go through this. It is fucking absurd. and to not take away the necessity and of the issue of what has to be done with this, but still seeing the point to laugh at it. And I got her happy, and I got her laughing. Me and a coworker helped her put all this stuff into her minivan, and I told her specifically that I expect to see her and her father in a month after this period of isolation is over, which she liked. I wanted to display that there are people out there that understand that this is tough shit going on, and that we understand pretty much. And point got across, and it's all good. Coronavirus is now in 50 states. West Virginia finally graduated and has its first case. So, yay, welcome to the club. We have jackets. On the last count that I saw, we have thousands of cases and over 104 people dead. 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks out. Donald Trump does not get all bad marks on this. I think he's finally figuring out that he should let the experts talk. Let the experts actually deal with this. And they're coming up with certain things, especially economically, which is going to be positive. The Mnuchin's saying that we're going to have checks rolled out for all of us able-bodied American people, all of us adults. 500 billion is going to be distributed towards us. I'm assuming in a form of a $1,000 check. By April 6th is when we're supposed to see our first checks. We've heard Republicans advocate for things like that in the past few days. And in the back of your head, you go, wow, boy, when the chips are down, socialism looks awfully appealing now, doesn't it? Oh, gosh darn, we can't possibly have help, Medicare for all, but let's sure as hell bail out the oil industry or the airline industry. But rag on Barack Obama if he does the same thing at the start of his term, right? Because that was socialism. How dare he? You have to point out the hypocrisy of that. And just because you're against Donald Trump doesn't mean you suddenly, out of principle, tear up your check. The money don't know where it comes from. It doesn't know it comes from a scumbag. It's a positive thing. It's a good thing that Trump's administration wants to push for this. That's great. The only thing about it is that it's a band-aid. I'm not saying, give us $5,000 checks or anything. But I'm also acknowledging that y'all didn't want the type of socialism that Bernie was advocating, but the corporate socialism to buy out or bail out rather industries that are going to be suffering from manpower shortage due to this virus. That's a little bit hypocritical. You don't want it to make easier healthcare for people on the good times, and you go, why isn't this like this during the bad times? Trump doesn't get all bad marks on this. As I said, he's letting the experts talk. They're the ones that are dictating what's going on. I am having a problem with Mike Pence's genuflecting on the president's vision. All this cooperation is from the president. People are following his guidelines. They're not his guidelines. He did not come up with this in his mind. He's putting his rubber stamp on it because his people are doing that. the good experts and doctors and scientists put this together. He nodded his head, and so therefore it comes forth as a political document, like his little guide. But he's not doing it. Mr. President, because of your leadership, you're saving lives, thousands of lives. You know, that's when you don't want to trust these people. You can't be honest with like how this came about. It's, you know, you're giving credit to somebody who's just there nodding their head. I wouldn't buy it if, you know, we were having the same type of pandemic and Joe Biden says, because of Barack Obama's leadership, thousands of people survived. No, because it wasn't going to be Barack Obama. It would be Barack Obama having the good nature to sidestep and say, "No, this is not on me. No, 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 no. You know, the people that was hired, the people that was doing this, uh, let's call them our pandemic group that we don't have anymore. They were the ones that were doing this. You know, give them all the credit, because these doctors and these scientists are working their ass off to develop tests, to distribute the tests, to give us the actual guidelines that some other person's name is on it, like there were Trump steaks was on it. Give them the credit. Now, we are seeing a lot of dramatic things coming about this with this virus. In my state of Virginia, schools are out till after spring break. In Kansas, they close the schools for the rest of the year. And Kansas has less cases than I do, you know, in terms of Virginia. Virginia has, as according to livescience.com, has 67 cases and 2 fatalities. And it's only growing. We are seeing businesses closing early, businesses closing entirely. Uh, our state level leaders are telling us not to gather in groups larger than 50. Cities are going into shutdown mode, in curfew mode, and you know, as what we're dealing with in the states, internationally, obviously, is far worse because they got hit far harder. I would like to see the chronological time frame here on how all these other countries are getting so many more cases and we're getting so many more fatalities where they are, while we are just getting a sprinkle here and it's building and it's building and it's building. Will our shutting in help us? Will it whittle down cases? Perhaps. That is a logical thing of us hunkering down and just waiting for pestilence to ride by amongst the other 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But again, one of the problems is the uncertainty. And another thing I'll give the Trump team credit on is that we're now finally we're now getting out of the misinformation stage where we were having the past few weeks, and we're getting to the shut the fuck up stage, listen to the doctor stage, where we are actually having a consistent, coherent message. Still, we don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on, but they at least admit it now. They are doing their best. So we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'll give Trump as much as I can the benefit of the doubt. But there's some certain things that are going on that we hear articles about that is kind of galling when it comes to him. He's now calling it the Chinese flu. Is that even necessary? Can't even say coronavirus? Is that too big a word? Or COVID-19? Is that too intricate and complicated? Just call it the Chinese flu, Chinese virus? Just want to get in your immature bullshit in? I don't need to hear the genuflecting of how wonderful the dear leader is because that's bullshit. That does nothing to deal with what's going on. And it makes me think the worst case scenario about all this, how political that they want to make this, well, you can't vote Trump out of office. No, he single-handedly saved you from a virus. He saved you from the plague. I wait for the evangelicals to deify him over that. Jesus walks amongst us and he's orange. We got a lot of things going on. And for me, as I said before, I have less fear of getting this. I work, as I said, I work at a grocery store. I see hundreds of people daily. I wear gloves. But, I'm still rolling the dice here. The thing is, for me, I'm less worried about getting this and getting sick. Because even when I get these symptoms, and even though it's going to suck, and I will isolate myself in some room somewhere and ride it out uncomfortably, maybe painfully, I am still relatively healthy that I will see the other side of it. But my fear is getting this and giving it to other people. I don't want to be responsible for someone else getting sick, or if they're compromised at getting more than sick. There are people that are saying that we're not even going to see the peak of this till at least May, June, or July, which means this is only going up and going up and going up. And when it gets this worse, the uncertainty not only on our health side, but our economic side, what do we do? What do I do when, if, God forbid, any one of my coworkers gets infected with this, and the company decides to make the call and shuts the place down? $1,000 looks pretty good to me, no matter who's the one doing it. My funny joke is that it's amazing how many Republicans are suddenly on the Yang Gang. We can hindsight this later. I have plenty of things I have a question and an annoyance and an anger about concerning this virus, concerning certain people and how they handled it. But we can't deal with that now. We have to move forward with this. Let's get healthy. Then let's get pissed. When the coronavirus relief bill is going through the House, and people are, saying it's not going too far in certain angles, and certain angles is not going in different directions. When people complain about, oh, well, they're putting, abortion rights stuff in here. That's bad. Oh, yeah, well, they're putting border wall stuff in here. That's bad. Set aside, oh, we're putting right to life stuff here. That's bad because that's nothing to do with what we're doing right now. You know, then people decided, you know what? Let's cut the shit. Let's just get this thing done. You know, we'll augment this later. We'll cut things later. But come on, we have people suffering now. But then you see Louis Gohmert hold it up in the house because I haven't read it yet. Little Louis Gohmert, little bald guy, who got exposed to the same person at CPAC that Ted Cruz and Matt Gaetz did, who decided I'm not gonna self isolate. No, I'm gonna go and lead a tour of Congress with children. Fucking really. How galling is it that I have to sit here and say that Ted Cruz and Matt Gaetz, piece of shit, Matt Gaetz was wearing a gas mask because he was mocking this whole fucking thing when one of his constituents like died a week later. That I have to sit here and say that Ted Cruz and Matt Gaetz is more fucking responsible than any other human being on the planet. But yeah, they are over Louis Gohmert. And he holds this bill up because he hadn't read it. And he wants to read it first. Fuck you. Fuck you. Every other Republican in the House, no matter what argument they have, they say let it roll. But little Louis, who gets voted in every cycle because his 12 cousins and brothers, who probably are the same people, get him voted in, because that's the only people at his district, apparently, can hold it up. And then when it finally does reach the Senate, and Mitch McConnell himself says, you know what, you don't like it, gag on it because we're going to vote on it. Let's get it through, let it roll. Then Rand Paul holds it up. You know, who has two thumbs and rants? Called it that Rand Paul would have a problem with this. Called it when it was just the paid sick leave bill. Well, it was just that. When Republicans suddenly had a problem with that, because Lamar Alexander sure had a problem with that. Yeah, humanity is in small doses. You applaud when they show up, but in the end, these people who are absolutely free, or they believe that they're free of any exposure to the coronavirus, doesn't give a shit about you when they're hiding behind their white picket fences in their gated community and think they're fine, so you don't need paid sick leave because they don't need paid sick leave. If they don't need it, you don't need it. But it's all fun and games until a crisis like this shows up, and all these hardcore capitalists that think you give anything from the government to anyone is absolute socialism and it leads to the fucking gulag. Oh, well, no. This is different now. This is different now. Our industries that we get kickbacks are suffering, so we better bail them out. And all these people, they're going to look at us as we're inhuman monsters for not giving a shit for years. Oh, we better assuage them, so let's send them out $1,000 checks. That will help us in our election. Oh, I mean, that will help them in their time of need. There was no shame in taking any of these checks from any of these people. First of all, it's your money. It was always your money. All this money, all this liquid green that goes back and forth and flows through our government, that is yours. That is mine. That is our taxes. You hear people bitch and moan when they're using my tax dollars to fill a pothole outside on a street that I'm not on. How dare they use my tax dollars for emergency care for strangers that I don't know? How dare they saving people's lives on my dime? How dare you using my money to educate children? You hear this shit all the time. Well, you're going to get back some of your money. You're going to get it back. In order to facilitate you actually perpetuating your own lives, if you're having an issue concerning, having to go to work or not be able to go to work because of this illness. So it's your money anyway. You're just you're getting a chunk back a little early. Good for you. Good for me. Good for all of us. We're not going out to the mall. Let's say that much. Let's pretend that we don't have our short-term memory loss issue that they so assume that we do. Let's have the long term. Let's imagine 7 months from now, when we're closing in on that election day in November. We're going to think that this administration is the saviors of our humanity, of our lives, that staved off a plague? Or are we going to remember how in the first month or so, going back to January, where we're starting to hear about this illness in China and how it's starting to spread here and there throughout the world, that our president was downplaying the shit out of it? That at rallies, when Democrats were starting to bring this up, that he called it the next Democratic hoax. That when we get numbers of cases and deaths, he downplays the numbers of cases and deaths. That even when governors are trying to deal with these issues that are hard hit, like in Washington, instead of just being a decent fucking human being, this guy goes and says he's a snake. And has people genuflecting of how brilliant he is and saying that, doctors come up and they're so amazed at how much I know. Why is that necessary? How is that not a mental and emotional problem that in the face of a pandemic we have to prop ourselves up with lies? And then says, oh, I knew it was a pandemic before other people knew it was a pandemic. Then why'd you call it a hoax? Because of politics. Because politics is more important. How is it that we have articles talking about how you were so desperate to get the materials from Germany, from a German company, you were going to pay them in cash in order for you to patent their research into a vaccine that would be pro-American? Of course, the company now denies it's happening. But there's so many questions on that. And again, so much smoke. You're just tamping out the fire now, aren't you? Wouldn't that be the worst case scenario? That at the time of an elections period, a illness gets developed, and right around the time that election starts to matter, lo and behold, a Trump vaccine appears to save the lives of everyone. Oh my God! More than likely, that's not true. But like people who imagine the worst case scenario of Barack Obama, like when Rush Limbaugh said that he was spouting communist propaganda in college, and then by the next segment, it turns out he was fact-checked it and says, no, that wasn't happening. But then he says on air, well, didn't you believe it was true? You would believe that something this cynical would be true. It's most likely not. It's a what if. But because of this person, how this person is, that what if is awfully realistic now, isn't it? Alright, I'm nearing an hour. So in the next 27 seconds, I will say the ranter rants because his urge to rant is always rising. Take care of yourselves. Keep yourselves safe. Be mindful of your health. Be mindful of the health of those around you. Wrap yourself in bubble wrap, some of you. Love you all. And tolerate others. see you next time.